Growing up in Riverside, Michigan, I never had much. Our neighborhood wasn't exactly what you'd call prestigious. Mom worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table after Dad left. The Gibson family wasn't known for anything special, just honest, hard-working people who never caught a break. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My cousin Tyler Anderson? He was different. His father, my Uncle Robert, had made it big in real estate development in Chicago. Tyler grew up in a lakefront mansion, attended private schools, and never knew what it meant to worry about bills. We'd see each other at family gatherings maybe once every few years. Each time, the divide between us seemed to grow wider. He'd talk about his European vacations while I worked summer jobs just to buy school supplies. That all changed last summer at our family reunion. Tyler took one look at the crowd gathering outside my grandmother's house and muttered, "Poor people outside." He didn't know I was standing right behind him. He also didn't know about the keys in my pocket and the journey that had led me there. This is the story of how perceptions can be shattered in an instant, and how success doesn't always look the way people expect. The invitation to Grandma Eleanor's 80th birthday celebration arrived in my email 6 months before the actual event. Family reunion, Anderson Gibson family, all relatives welcome. I almost deleted it. Family gatherings weren't exactly my idea of a good time, especially when they involved the wealthier branches of our family tree. I was 29 now, living in a modest apartment in Detroit. After high school, I managed to get a partial scholarship to Michigan State. I worked nights and weekends to cover the rest, graduating with a degree in computer science. The tech industry had been good to me, but I kept a low profile. No flashy lifestyle, no social media updates. Just quietly focus on building something meaningful. 3 years ago, I'd created a security software platform that caught the attention of some venture capitalists. After turning down their initial offers, I eventually partnered with one who understood my vision. We'd recently closed a major deal with several Fortune 500 companies. The valuation of my company had just crossed into 9 figures, but only a handful of people knew that detail. I hadn't seen most of my extended family since before any of this happened. My mom knew, of course. She'd been there through the lean years, sometimes slipping me grocery money when I was working 18-hour days trying to get my startup off the ground. I made sure she was comfortable now, though she still lived in the same modest house where I grew up. "It's home," she'd say whenever I suggested she move. As the reunion date approached, my anxiety grew. I'd always felt like an outsider at these gatherings. The successful Andersons from Chicago with their private school educations and country club memberships. The Gibsons from Grand Rapids with their stable corporate careers. And then there was our branch, the Riverside Gibsons, who were always struggling to make ends meet. "You should go," my girlfriend Melissa urged. We'd been dating for almost 2 years. She'd been my company's first actual employee, taking a chance on me when all I could offer was equity in a company that might go nowhere. "Your grandmother won't be around forever." She was right, of course. I hadn't seen Grandma Eleanor in person for over 3 years. After making some calls to confirm my schedule would allow it, I RSVP'd yes. The morning of the reunion, I stood in front of my closet deliberating. Part of me wanted to show up in a designer suit, pull up in my new Tesla Model S, and watch Jaws drop, but that felt petty. Instead, I chose a simple button-down shirt, jeans, and the same leather jacket I'd worn since college. The Tesla stayed in the garage. I took my old Honda Civic instead. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. The drive to Grandma's house in Riverside took about an hour. As I approached our old neighborhood, memories flooded back. The corner store where I'd worked my first job at 15. The park where I'd spent countless hours coding on my laptop because our apartment didn't have reliable air conditioning. The high school where teachers had both encouraged my ambitions and warned me not to get my hopes up. Grandma still lived in the same two-story house where she'd raised her 3 children after Grandpa died. It wasn't large by any means, but it had a spacious backyard that was perfect for family gatherings. As I pulled up, I could see cars lining both sides of the street, some modest sedans and a few luxury vehicles that I assumed belonged to the Chicago branch. I parked a block away and walked toward the house, the weight of the Tesla key fob in my pocket feeling suddenly significant. I'd brought it along out of habit, even though I'd chosen to drive the Civic. As I approached, I could see a crowd gathering in the front yard. Kids running around, adults clustered in conversational groups. The familiar scent of my grandmother's famous barbecue filled the air. I spotted my mom first, helping to arrange food on tables set up in the yard. She saw me and waved enthusiastically, excusing herself to come greet me. "Jason, you made it!" She hugged me tightly. I was starting to worry you'd changed your mind. "Traffic was heavier than I expected," I said, hugging her back. "The place looks great." Mom had helped decorate with balloons and banners celebrating Grandma's 80 years. A large photo collage displayed family pictures spanning decades. "Your grandmother is going to be so happy to see you," she said. "She's inside with your Aunt Patricia." "Who else is here?" I asked casually, glancing around at the gathering. "Oh, everyone made it. Your cousins from Grand Rapids, the Minneapolis crew, and Robert brought his whole family from Chicago." She lowered her voice slightly. "Including Tyler." Tyler. Just the mention of his name brought back a flood of memories, most of them unpleasant. My cousin was 3 years older than me, and he'd never let me forget that he was from the successful side of the family. During one particularly painful family gathering when I was 14, he'd cornered me to explain that some people were just born to achieve, while others were destined to struggle, and it was obvious which category I fell into. "Great," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It'll be good to catch up with everyone." Mom gave me a knowing look. "Just be yourself, Jason. You have nothing to prove to anyone here." If only she knew how many times I'd repeated that exact phrase to myself on the drive over. I made my way through the gathering, greeting relatives I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Dorothy commented on how healthy I looked, family code for assuming I'd gained weight. Uncle Steve asked if I was still playing with computers, his way of dismissing my career. I took it all in stride, answering questions vaguely when asked about my work. "Just doing some software development," I'd say with a shrug. "It pays the bills." I finally made it to the house to find Grandma Eleanor. She was sitting in her favorite armchair, surrounded by several of my aunts. When she saw me, her face lit up. "Is that my Jason?" she called out, extending her arms for a hug. I crossed the room quickly and bent down to embrace her. She felt smaller than I remembered, more fragile, but her grip was still strong. "Happy birthday, Grandma," I said, kissing her cheek. "You look amazing." "Flattery will get you everywhere," she laughed, patting the spot next to her. "Sit down and tell me about your life. Your mother says you're doing well for yourself." I sat beside her, aware of the curious glances from relatives who hadn't seen me in years. "I'm doing fine, Grandma. How about you? How does it feel to be 80 years young?" "It feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said with the wisdom that had always characterized her. "Surrounded by family, watching the next generations grow. Though I do wish some of you would give me some great-grandchildren soon." I laughed, steering the conversation away from my personal life. For the next 20 minutes, I listened as Grandma shared stories about her recent adventures with her senior citizens group and caught me up on family gossip. Eventually, I excused myself to get some food, promising to return for a longer chat later. As I stepped onto the back porch, I immediately spotted Tyler holding court with several cousins near the grill. At 32, he looked every bit the successful businessman in his tailored shirt and designer sunglasses. His wife Shannon stood beside him, perfectly coiffed and visibly pregnant with their second child. I considered avoiding them entirely, but the food table was right beside their group. As I approached, I overheard fragments of Tyler's conversation. Just closed on a second vacation property in Aspen. The market there is insane, but Dad's connections helped us secure it below asking. I kept my head down, filling my plate. With potato salad and baked beans? Maybe I could slip away unnoticed. Jason Gibson, is that you? No such luck. Tyler had spotted me. I turned, forcing a smile. Hey, Tyler. Long time. Too long. He clapped me on the shoulder with excessive enthusiasm. What are you driving these days? I didn't see your car outside. Of course, that would be his first question. Just parked down the street, I said vaguely. Place was pretty crowded when I arrived. Tyler nodded knowingly. We came in Shannon's Range Rover. Had to leave my Porsche at home. Not enough room for the baby seat. He laughed as if he'd said something incredibly witty. Congratulations on the new baby, I said to Shannon, genuinely happy for them despite my feelings about Tyler. When are you due? August, she replied with a warm smile. A little girl this time. That's wonderful, I said. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Tyler wasn't ready to let the conversation drift away from himself. So what are you up to these days, Jason? Still living in Detroit? Yeah, still there, I confirmed. Tough city, he commented with exaggerated sympathy. Dad's company looked at some properties there a few years back, but decided against investing. Too risky, you know? I bit back several responses and simply nodded. It has its challenges. And work? Mom mentioned something about computers? He made it sound like I repaired calculators for a living. Software development. I said simply. It's going well. Tyler raised an eyebrow, clearly waiting for more details that I had no intention of providing. When I didn't elaborate, he filled the silence himself. Well, technology is certainly the future. I've been telling Dad we need to diversify our portfolio with more tech investments. In fact, at the country club last month, I was talking to this guy who runs a venture capital firm. I turned him out, nodding occasionally while scanning the yard for a graceful exit from the conversation. Relief came in the form of my young cousin Emma, who came running up to announce that Grandma was ready to cut the cake. As everyone began moving toward the center of the yard where a large sheet cake awaited, I hung back slightly. I needed a moment to recalibrate after the Tyler encounter. I moved toward the side gate, planning to take a quick walk around the block to clear my head. That's when I overheard it. Tyler was standing near the front of the house with two of our cousins, from the Chicago branch. They were looking out toward the street, where several neighborhood kids had gathered to watch the party. God, look at this neighborhood, Tyler said, his voice low but clear enough for me to hear. Poor people outside, probably hoping for leftover cake. The casual cruelty in his tone stopped me in my tracks. I felt a surge of anger, remembering how I had once been one of those neighborhood kids looking in from the outside. At that moment, I made a decision. I walked directly toward Tyler's group, reaching into my pocket as I approached. The Tesla key fob felt heavy in my hand. Hey, Tyler, I called out, louder than necessary. I think I left something in my car. Mind coming with me for a second? I could use your input on something. He looked surprised but nodded, clearly intrigued by the mysterious request. Sure, cuz. Lead the way. As we walked down the driveway toward the street, I could feel his eyes on me, assessing my worn leather jacket and jeans. So, what did you drive up in? He asked casually. I don't think I saw your car. It's just down here, I said, pointing down the block. We turned the corner and I stopped beside my old Honda Civic, deliberately walking to the passenger side. Tyler's expression shifted to something between pity and amusement. This is yours? Man, if you need help with a car loan or something. I cut him off by pressing the key fob in my hand. A distinctive electronic chirp sounded from across the street, where my black Tesla Model S sat gleaming in the afternoon sun. Tyler's mouth actually fell open. That's yours? Yeah, I said simply, starting to walk toward it. The Honda belongs to my lead developer. His car was in the shop, so I lent him mine for the weekend. I drove him here since I was worried about parking the Tesla on Grandma's street overnight. It wasn't entirely true. The Honda was still mine, kept as a reminder of harder times. But the look on Tyler's face was worth the small deception. You drive a Tesla? Tyler was struggling to reconcile this information with his perception of me. Those are like $100,000. This one's a bit more, actually, I said casually as we reached the car. I pressed the fob again, and the door swung open silently. It's the Plaid model, custom interior. Tyler circled the vehicle in shock, running his hand along the sleek exterior. But how? You said you do software development. I leaned against the car, suddenly feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. For years, I'd kept my success quiet, partly out of humility and partly out of a lingering insecurity that had followed. Me since childhood. I don't just do software development, Tyler. I own a cybersecurity company. We developed an enterprise security platform that's now used by over 60 Fortune 500 companies. I paused, letting the information sink in. And we just closed our Series C funding round last month. The company's valued at just over $300 million now. The color drained from Tyler's face. $300 million? Your company is worth $300 million? I nodded, feeling no particular joy in his shock, just a sense of finally stepping into my truth. I founded it 4 years ago, started coding the initial platform in my apartment while working a day job. But you never said anything, he stammered. At the last reunion, you were just regular Jason. What would be the point of saying anything? I asked genuinely. Success isn't about showing off or making others feel small. It's about creating something meaningful and taking care of the people you love. Tyler stared at me for a long moment, then looked back toward Grandma's house where our family was gathering around the birthday cake. For the first time since we were kids, I saw something in his eyes that looked remarkably like respect. Those kids you were talking about, I said, quietly. The poor people outside? That was me once, right here on this street, watching other people's celebrations, wondering what it felt like to not worry about money. I pocketed the Tesla key. Let's head back. I don't want to miss Grandma blowing out her candles. As we walked back toward the house, Tyler was uncharacteristically quiet. Just before we rejoined the family gathering, he stopped me with a hand on my arm. Jason, he started, seeming to struggle with the words. I've been an ass. For years. I smiled slightly. Yeah, you have. I'm sorry, he said, and to my surprise, he seemed genuinely remorseful. I made a lot of assumptions about you. About everyone from this neighborhood. I nodded, accepting his apology without making it too easy for him. People are always more than their zip code or their bank account, Tyler. I learned that growing up here. The sound of our family singing Happy Birthday drifted out to us. Tyler glanced toward the gathering, then back at me. Would you be willing to tell me about your company sometime? What did you build? There was something new in his voice. Humility, maybe, or genuine curiosity. Sure, I said. But right now, let's go celebrate Grandma's birthday. Some things are more important than business. As we rejoined the family circle, Grandma Eleanor caught my eye from her place of honor before the massive cake with its 80 candles. Her knowing smile told me she'd seen more than I realized. I smiled back, feeling truly at home in this gathering, for the first time in years. Sometimes success isn't about fancy cars or million-dollar valuations. Sometimes it's about knowing exactly who you are and where you came from, and allowing others to finally see it too. The remainder of Grandma. Eleanor's birthday celebration took on a different tone. I noticed Tyler watching me with newfound curiosity as I moved through the gathering. The revelation about my success had clearly shaken his worldview, though I wasn't sure if the change would stick beyond this afternoon. After the cake was served, I found myself cornered by Uncle Robert, Tyler's father and the family's long-standing success story. He was nursing a glass of bourbon, his gold watch glinting in the afternoon sun. "Tyler tells me you've done well for yourself," he said, studying me with calculating eyes. "Something about a security company?" I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Resilient Shield. We develop enterprise-level cybersecurity solutions." "Interesting." He swirled his drink thoughtfully. "Never would have pegged you for an entrepreneur. Your mother always said you were smart, but—" He trailed off, leaving the implied doubt hanging in the air. "But I came from the wrong side of the family tree?" I finished for him, unable to completely mask the edge in my voice. Uncle Robert had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "That's not what I meant, isn't it?" I asked quietly. "You've made it pretty clear over the years which branches of this family you thought would succeed." He cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps I've been short-sighted in some of my assessments." Coming from Uncle Robert, this was practically a full apology. "Water under the bridge," I said, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. Years of condescension couldn't be erased with one awkward conversation. "So, tell me about your company," he said, switching to his business tone. $300 million valuation? That's impressive for— How old are you now?" 29, I answered. "And yes, our last funding round put us at just over 300. We're projecting to hit $500 million by next year if we meet our growth targets." Uncle Robert's eyebrows shot up. "And you're the majority shareholder?" 53%, I confirmed. "My early investors and employees hold most of the rest." He whistled low. "That puts your personal worth at— I don't really focus on that number," I cut in, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "The company's success matters more than my net worth." Uncle Robert studied me with new interest. "You know, we should talk. The Anderson Group has been looking to diversify into tech investments. Perhaps there's a conversation to be had there." Smiled politely but non-committally. "Perhaps, though we're not currently seeking additional investment." Before he could press further, I excused myself to go help Mom and my aunts with clearing the dessert plates. As I walked away, I felt Uncle Robert's eyes following me, recalculating my position in his mental family hierarchy. The late afternoon stretched into evening. Strings of patio lights came on as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the backyard. Someone had started a bonfire in the fire pit, and the younger cousins were roasting marshmallows. I found a quiet spot on the porch steps, taking a moment to decompress from the social interactions. Family gatherings had always been draining for me, and this one came with the added layer of my newly revealed success. "Mind if I join you?" A voice broke into my thoughts. I looked up to see my cousin Allison, Tyler's younger sister, standing beside me with 2 bottles of beer. "Be my guest," I said, accepting the beer she offered. "How have you been, Allie?" Unlike her brother, Allison had always been kind. 3 years younger than me, she'd sometimes sought me out at family gatherings when we were teenagers, preferring my quiet company to her brother's louder friend groups. "Can't complain," she said, settling beside me on the steps. "Just finished my residency in pediatrics, starting a fellowship next month." "That's amazing," I said sincerely. "Always knew you'd make a great doctor." She smiled, clinking her bottle against mine. "And apparently you've been keeping secrets about being a tech mogul." I laughed. "Hardly a mogul, just got lucky with the right idea at the right time." "That's not what I heard," she countered. "Tyler says you built something revolutionary. And trust me, getting my brother to admit someone else did something impressive is like pulling teeth." "How is it?" I asked, changing the subject. Working with kids? Allison's face lit up as she talked about her pediatric patients, the challenges and rewards of her chosen specialty. As we caught up, I realized how much I'd missed having actual conversations with family members who saw me as a person, not as a reflection of my parents' financial status. You know, she said after a while, Tyler's not always been the way he is. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. Okay, he's always been somewhat of a jerk, she admitted with a laugh. But Dad put a lot of pressure on him from an early age. The Anderson legacy and all that. It doesn't excuse his behavior, but it might explain some of it. I nodded, remembering the stern lectures Uncle Robert would give Tyler whenever he failed. To meet expectations. Your dad has strong opinions about success. Tell me about it, she sighed. When I told him I wanted to go into pediatrics instead of surgery, he didn't speak to me for a week. Said I was wasting my potential on a specialty that would never make me rich. But you stuck with it anyway, I observed. Some things matter. More than money, she said simply. Then she gestured toward the gathering. I think you understand that better than most here. Our conversation was interrupted by Grandma Eleanor, who appeared on the porch with a determined expression. Jason Gibson, she called out. Are you planning to hide out here all evening? Come help an old woman with something in the house. Exchanged an amused glance with Allison before getting to my feet. Duty calls. Don't let her fool you with that old woman act, Allison whispered. She could probably still outrun both of us. I followed Grandma into the house, through the kitchen, and into the small study that had once been Grandpa's domain. The room remained largely unchanged since his passing 15 years ago, bookshelves lining the walls, a sturdy oak desk by the window, family photos in simple frames. Grandma closed the door behind us and motioned for me to sit in one of the leather armchairs. Now, she said, lowering herself into the chair opposite mine. Tell me the real story of what's been going on with you. Not the watered-down version you've been sharing out there. I smiled, unsurprised by her directness. Grandma Eleanor had always had a knack for seeing through pretenses. What makes you think I'm holding back? I asked. Please, she scoffed. I raised your mother. I know when a Gibson is editing themselves. She leaned forward. Your mother told me bits and pieces about your company's success, but I want to hear it from you. The whole journey. So I told her. Starting with the night in my cramped Detroit apartment when the core idea for Resilient Shield had come to me. The months of coding until dawn while working a day job to pay rent. The first small contract that had allowed me to quit and focus entirely on the startup. The subsequent years of growth, setbacks, pivots, and eventual breakthrough. Grandma listened, intently, asking surprisingly technical questions at times that revealed she'd been reading up on cybersecurity. I'm just sorry Grandpa isn't here to see what you've built, she said when I finished. He always said you had the same spark he did. The mention of my grandfather caught me off guard. Grandpa said that? About me? She nodded, reaching for a framed photo on the side table, a younger version of herself with Grandpa and their 3 children. Your grandfather wasn't born into money either, you know. He worked in the steel mills right out of high school, saved every penny until he could start his own machine shop. I'd heard bits of this family history before, but never the complete story. It wasn't a tech empire, she continued, but he built something from nothing, created jobs for 30 families in this community. She set the photo down carefully. He saw that potential in you when you were just a boy, the way you'd take apart and reassemble everything you could get your hands on. A lump formed in my throat. I'd been 10 when Grandpa passed away, old enough to remember him but too young to have had the kinds of conversations I now wished we could have. I have something for you, Grandma said, rising slowly and moving to the desk. She withdrew a key from her cardigan pocket and unlocked the bottom drawer, removing a small wooden box. Your grandfather left instructions that this should be given to you when you'd found your path, as he put it. She placed the box in my hands. I'd say founding a $300 million company qualifies. The box was simple but beautifully crafted, the wood smooth with age and handling. I opened it carefully to find an antique pocket watch nestled on a bed of faded velvet. Beside it lay a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. It was his father's, Grandma explained. Your great-grandfather brought it from Ireland when he immigrated in 1912. I lifted the watch gently, feeling its solid weight in my palm. The gold case was engraved with intricate scrollwork surrounding the initials F.G., Francis Gibson, my great-grandfather. Read the note, Grandma urged softly. I unfolded the paper carefully, recognizing Grandpa's distinctive handwriting for, Jason, this timepiece has witnessed the struggles and triumphs of 3 generations of Gibson men. Each of us started with little more than determination and the willingness to work harder than anyone expected us to. Whatever path you choose, remember that true success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by the obstacles you overcome and the lives you touch along the way. Time is the only wealth that matters in the end. Use yours wisely. With pride and love, Grandpa William. I stared at the note, reading it twice more before carefully refolding it. The simple words contained exactly the wisdom I needed, validation that my approach to success had been right all along. He wrote this before he got sick, Grandma said gently. Seemed to know even then that you'd do something special. Thank you, I managed, my voice thick with emotion. This means more than I can say. She patted my hand. He'd be proud of the man you've become, not because of your company or its valuation, but because you've remained true to yourself through it all. A knock at the study door interrupted our moment. Mom poked her head in. Everything all right here? People are starting to ask where the birthday girl disappeared to. Just having a chat with my grandson, Grandma said with a wink in my direction. We're coming. As Grandma rose to rejoin her party, I carefully placed the watch back in its box. I'll be right there, I promised. Just need a minute. Alone in the study, I took a deep breath, processing the unexpected gift and all it represented. The watch had witnessed my family's journey across generations, from Irish immigrants to steelworkers to entrepreneurs, each facing different challenges, each defining success on their own terms. When I finally stepped back outside, the gathering had taken on the relaxed atmosphere of a summer evening. Lawn chairs were arranged in conversational clusters. The younger, children chased fireflies at the edge of the yard. I spotted Tyler standing somewhat awkwardly by himself near the fence, nursing a beer. After a moment's hesitation, I walked over to join him. Hey, I said simply. Hey, he replied, seeming relieved that I'd approached first. Some party, huh? I nodded, looking around at our extended family. Grandma knows how to bring people together. Stood in silence for a moment, the years of tension between us making small talk difficult. Listen, Tyler finally said, about what I said earlier, about the poor people comment. Water under the bridge, I said, using the same phrase I'd offered his father. No, it's not, he insisted. It was a shitty thing to say, entitled and judgmental and, well, everything I've been raised to be, honestly. His self-awareness surprised me. You're being pretty hard on yourself. Not hard enough, he countered. I've spent my whole life looking down on this side of the family, acting like Dad's success was somehow my achievement too. He shook his head. Meanwhile, you were out there actually building something on your own. I studied him, trying to gauge whether this moment of humility was genuine or temporary. Success looks different for everyone, Tyler. Not everyone needs to build a company. I know, he sighed. But I haven't built anything, just coasted on Dad's connections and family money. He took a swig of his beer. Shannon's been saying for years that I need to find my own path. Maybe she's right. the mention of his wife, made me glance across the yard to where Shannon sat chatting with Allison, her hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly. "How's she feeling?" I asked. "With the pregnancy?" Tyler's expression softened. "Good days and bad. Morning sickness hit her harder this time around." A genuine smile crossed his face. "But she's amazing, way stronger than I am." For the first time, I glimpsed the person Tyler might become. A father concerned about his wife. A man beginning to question the values he'd been raised with. "You know," I said thoughtfully, "if you're serious about finding your own path, might have a proposition for you." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of proposition?" "Resilient Shield is expanding our client outreach division. We need someone who understands corporate culture, has existing relationships with business leaders, and can translate our technical capabilities into terms executives understand." Tyler stared at me. "Are you offering me a job?" "Potentially," I said carefully. "It would mean starting from the bottom, proving yourself, working harder than you probably ever have. No special treatment because we're family. Quite the opposite, actually. Why would you do that? After the way I've treated you?" I considered the question seriously. "Partly because I think you might actually be good at it. Partly because I believe people can change when given the right opportunity." I smiled slightly. "And partly because your dad's face would be priceless when he finds out you're working for me." That drew a startled laugh from Tyler. "You're not wrong about that. Last part." He seemed to be genuinely considering the idea. "I'd need to talk to Shannon about it. It would mean a serious lifestyle adjustment." "Take some time," I said. "The offer doesn't expire tonight." He nodded thoughtfully. "Thanks, Jason." Seriously. As the evening progressed, I circulated through different family groups, reconnecting with relatives I'd barely spoken to in years. The dynamic had shifted subtly. People who had previously dismissed me now seemed eager to hear about my work and life in Detroit. I was careful not to let the conversation revolve entirely around my business success. Instead, I asked about their lives, their children, their interests. In doing so, I discovered cousins with fascinating careers I knew nothing about. A marine biologist studying coral restoration, a high school principal transforming a struggling school, a carpenter crafting custom furniture from reclaimed wood. The Gibson-Anderson family contained multitudes, each person defining success in their own way. As the gathering began to wind down, I found Mom helping Grandma clean up in the kitchen. "Need an extra pair of hands?" I offered. "Always," Mom smiled. "Can you take that garbage bag out to the bin?" I grabbed the bag and headed toward the side of the house where the trash cans were kept. As I rounded the corner, I nearly collided with Uncle Robert, who appeared to be on his phone despite the late hour. "Sorry," I said, stepping back. "Didn't see you there." He quickly ended his call. "No problem, just checking in with the office." He seemed awkward, unusual for a man typically so self-assured. "Listen, Jason, I wanted to catch you before you left." I set the garbage bag down. "What's up?" "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," he began, "about how I've viewed different branches of the family." This was unexpected. Uncle Robert wasn't known for introspection. "I owe your mother an apology," he continued. "After your father left, I wasn't supportive the way a brother should be." "That's probably something you should tell her directly," I suggested. He nodded. "I plan to, but I owe you an acknowledgement as well." He cleared his throat. "I underestimated you. Dismissed your potential because of circumstances that were never in your control." I considered his words carefully. "I appreciate that, Uncle Robert. Though to be honest, those low expectations might have been the best thing that happened to me." He looked confused. "How do you figure?" "It meant I had to prove myself on merit alone," I explained. "No shortcuts, no family connections to fall back on. Everything Resilient Shield has achieved came from the work, not the Gibson-Anderson name." Uncle Robert absorbed this, seeming to turn the concept over in his mind. An interesting perspective. He extended his hand. I hope we can get to know each other better going forward. As colleagues, perhaps. I shook his hand firmly. I'd like that. As I finished taking out the trash and headed back inside, I reflected on how differently this family reunion had turned out from what I'd expected. I'd arrived dreading the usual hierarchy, the subtle and not-so-subtle reminders of which branches of the family had made it. Instead, I was leaving with connections renewed, old wounds beginning to heal, and the unexpected gift of my grandfather's watch, a tangible reminder that the Gibson legacy of determination and hard work had never skipped a generation after all. Back in the kitchen, I found Grandma alone, wrapping leftover cake. Need help with that? I asked. Almost done, she replied. But you can walk me out to the porch. These old bones need some fresh air before the last guests leave. I offered her my arm, and we made our way outside. The night had turned cool, stars visible above the old neighborhood where I'd grown up. We settled into the porch swing that had hung in the same spot for as long as I could remember. So, Grandma said after a comfortable silence, was it as bad as you feared? I laughed.
Crinkle, 都许可我是非西苏西塞。
Though I didn't expect to end the night potentially hiring Tyler. Life has a way of surprising us, she mused. Sometimes people just need the right moment to show who they truly are, or who they could become. As we gently swayed on the porch, I fingered the outline of the wooden box in my jacket pocket, feeling a connection to my past even as I looked toward the future. Sometimes success isn't something you can measure with valuations or bank accounts. Sometimes it's found in the moments that bridge who you were with who you've become, and in the realization that you never needed anyone else's approval to define your worth. 3 months after Grandma Eleanor's birthday celebration, I stood in my office on the 27th floor of a renovated historic building in downtown Detroit. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline and the Detroit River beyond. The space hummed with the energy of nearly 100 employees, developers, security specialists, client support teams, and more, all focused on growing Resilient Shield. My assistant Vanessa knocked on the open door. Your 10 o'clock is here, she announced with a knowing smile. I took a deep breath. Send him in. A moment later, Tyler walked through the door. Gone was the designer polo and luxury watch. Instead, he wore a modest suit, nice but not ostentatious, and carried a leather portfolio that had seen better days. The transformation in his appearance was striking, but even more noticeable was the change in his demeanor. The cocky swagger had been replaced by something resembling humility. Morning, he said, extending his hand. Thanks for seeing me. I shook it firmly. Of course, have a seat. As Tyler settled into the chair across from my desk, I couldn't help but reflect on the unlikely path that had led us here. After our conversation at the reunion, I'd honestly expected him to dismiss the job offer once the moment had passed. Instead, he'd called 2 weeks later, asking if I was serious. We'd had several conversations since then, culminating in today's formal interview. So, I began, leaning back in my chair. Tell me why you want to join Resilient Shield. Tyler met my gaze directly. The easy answer would be that I'm looking for a change or a new challenge. He paused. But the truth is more complicated. I've got time, I said. He nodded, gathering his thoughts. After the reunion, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said, about building something meaningful. I realized I've never done that. Never even tried. His fingers drummed nervously on the portfolio. Shannon and I had some long talks about our values, about what we want to teach our children. The mention of his family sparked my curiosity. How is Shannon doing? She must be getting close, right? A genuine smile lit up his face. 6 weeks to go. She's amazing. Uncomfortable as hell, but powering through. Little Emma is excited about becoming a big sister. That's great, I said sincerely. Tyler's expression turned serious again. The thing is, Jason, I've been living off my dad's reputation and connections my entire career, taking the safe route, following the path he laid out. He leaned forward. When I saw what you've built, not just the company, but the person you've become, it made me question everything. And you think working here is the answer? I asked, curious about his reasoning. I think it's a start, he replied. A chance. To prove to myself that I can succeed based on my own merits. He smiled wryly. Plus, like you said, my dad's face when I told him I was interviewing with you was pretty priceless. I laughed, remembering my half-joking comment from the reunion. How did that conversation go? Tyler grimaced. About as well as you'd expect. He thinks I'm having some kind of midlife crisis at 32. His expression hardened slightly. But for the first time in my life, I'm making a decision without worrying about his approval. I studied my cousin, searching for any sign that this was just another passing phase. Instead, I saw something I'd never associated with Tyler before. Determination, you know? I said carefully. If I hire you, it won't be easy. I meant what I said about starting at the bottom. We don't do special treatment here, especially for families. I wouldn't want it any other way, he assured me. I need to earn this on my own. For the next hour, we conducted a proper interview. I asked about his experience in client relations, his understanding of the cybersecurity landscape, and his approach to learning new technical concepts. He answered thoughtfully, neither overstating his qualifications nor underselling his transferable skills. When we finished, I stood and extended my hand. The team will review your application along with the others. We should have a decision by early next week. Tyler looked momentarily surprised, then nodded in understanding. Of course, no special treatment. He gathered his portfolio and stood. Thank you for the opportunity, Jason. As he reached the door, I called after him. Tyler? He turned back. Yeah? For what it's worth, I'm impressed by what you're trying to do. Whatever happens with the job, that takes courage. A smile touched his lips. Maybe the Gibson-Anderson genes aren't so different after all. After Tyler left, I buzzed Vanessa. Can you ask Marcus to come in? I want to discuss the client liaison position. Marcus Chen, my VP of Client Relations, appeared a few minutes later. He raised an eyebrow when I mentioned Tyler's application. Your cousin? The one you used to call the privileged pain in the ass? That Tyler? I winced. People can change. Marcus looked skeptical. And you think he has? I think he's trying, I said honestly. But I want your unbiased opinion. If you don't think he's right for the team, we don't move forward. Marcus nodded, appreciating that I wasn't pushing for preferential treatment. I'll review his application with the same criteria as everyone else. That's all I ask, I said. As Marcus left, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Still on for dinner tonight? Bringing someone special. I smiled, typing back. Wouldn't miss it. 7 p.m. at Giovanni's? The someone special was Jerry Michaels, a retired high school teacher Mom had been seeing for the past 2 months. They'd reconnected at a community garden project, and from the way Mom's voice lifted when she mentioned him, I suspected this relationship was becoming significant. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, code reviews, and strategic planning sessions. By 6:30, I was heading out, stopping briefly at my apartment to change before driving to Giovanni's, a family-owned Italian restaurant that had been our special occasion spot since I was a kid. Mom and Jerry were already seated when I arrived. She waved me over, her face brightening in that way that always made me feel like the most important person in the room. Jason, she stood to hug me. You remember Jerry? Jerry rose, extending a weathered hand. In his 70s, he had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the patient demeanor of someone who had spent decades working with teenagers. Good to see you again, I said, shaking his hand warmly. Likewise, he replied. Your mother hasn't stopped talking about your company's latest security innovation, though I admit most of it goes over my head. We settled in, ordering appetizers and wine. As Jerry and Mom shared stories about their community garden victories and setbacks, I observed how naturally they interacted, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at inside jokes, touching hands casually across the table. So, Mom said, during a lull in the conversation, how did Tyler's interview go? I should have known she'd bring that up. As well as could be expected, he seems serious about making a change. Your Aunt Patricia said he and your uncle had quite the argument when Tyler told them he was applying. Mom's expression was neutral, but I caught the glint of satisfaction in her eyes. Patricia was Robert's wife and had always been more sympathetic to our branch of the family. I heard, I acknowledged. But the decision isn't just up to me. My VP of Client Relations will have the final say. Mom nodded approvingly. That's fair. She hesitated, then added, I'm proud of you for giving him a chance, regardless of the outcome. Everyone deserves a second chance, Jerry commented. In 40 years of teaching, I saw plenty of students transform when given the right opportunity. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as our main courses arrived. Jerry shared entertaining stories from his teaching career, while Mom updated me on Grandma Eleanor's latest adventures. Apparently, she'd joined a senior citizens line dancing group and was talking about dating again. As we were considering dessert, my phone rang. Normally, I would have ignored it during dinner, but the caller ID showed Melissa, my girlfriend and the company's initial employee, who was now our chief technology officer. Sorry, I should take this, I said, excusing myself and stepping outside. What's up? I asked, concerned about the late call. We just got an alert, Melissa said, her voice tense. Potential breach attempt on the Johnson Financial account. My heart sank. Johnson Financial was one of our biggest clients, a regional banking network serving 5 states. How serious? Sophisticated, she replied. Not your typical script kiddie stuff. Team's already on it, but I thought you should know. I'll be there in 20, I promised, already moving toward my car. Back inside, I quickly explained the situation to Mom and Jerry. I'm really sorry to cut this short. Go, Mom said immediately. We understand. Rain check on dessert, Jerry added with a smile. Some things can't wait. I kissed Mom's cheek, left enough cash to cover the bill despite her protests, and headed for the office. 40 minutes later, I stood in our security operations center, watching as our team traced the breach attempt in real time. The wall of monitors displayed data flows, network maps, and detection alerts. Melissa and our head of security, Darren, were coordinating the response. They're good, Darren muttered, fingers flying across his keyboard. Using a previously undocumented exploit in a third-party API that Johnson integrated last month. Can we contain it? I asked, studying the visualizations. Melissa nodded. Already isolated the affected systems. We're deploying the patch now and running forensics to verify no data exfiltration occurred. For the next 3 hours, I watched our team work with practiced precision, identifying vulnerabilities, securing systems, documenting the attack pattern. By midnight, the crisis had been averted. Johnson Financial's data remained secure, and we had gathered valuable intelligence on a new attack vector. As the team started to disperse, many heading home for a few hours of sleep before returning to complete documentation, I noticed someone still hunched over a computer in the corner. To my surprise, it was Tyler. I walked over, puzzled. What are you doing here? You don't start until Monday. He looked up, dark circles under his eyes. I was having dinner nearby when Marcus called about the incident. Said it would be a good experience to observe how the team handles a crisis. He gestured to his notepad filled with diagrams and questions. I've been taking notes, trying to understand the workflow. I glanced at Marcus across the room, who gave me a subtle nod. Apparently, my VP had made his hiring decision. Learn anything. Useful? I asked Tyler. Mostly that I have a hell of a lot to learn, he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. The technical aspects are way over my head right now, but the communication flow was fascinating. How everyone knew their role, how information was prioritized and distributed. His observations were surprisingly insightful for someone with no background in our industry. Maybe Marcus had seen something in him that I'd missed. Well, don't stay too late, I advised. Monday will come fast enough. As I gathered my things to leave, Melissa approached. Your cousin? She asked quietly, nodding toward Tyler. Apparently, I confirmed. Marcus hired him for the junior client liaison position. She studied Tyler thoughtfully. Not what I expected based on your stories. Me neither, I admitted. People can surprise you, she said, squeezing my hand briefly before returning to her work. Outside, the city had that peculiar quiet that only exists in the early morning hours. Streetlights cast pools of amber on empty sidewalks, and the first hints of dawn were just beginning to lighten the eastern sky. As I drove home, I found myself thinking about Grandpa's watch, now sitting on my dresser in its wooden box. Time is the only wealth that matters in the end. Use yours wisely. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. The attempted breach at Johnson Financial had revealed weaknesses in our detection systems that required immediate attention. I found myself working 14-hour days alongside my team, refining algorithms and strengthening defenses. Through it all, Tyler surprised everyone, most of all me. He arrived early, stayed late, and approached each task with determined focus. When he didn't understand something technical, he asked questions without pretense or ego. When clients grew frustrated with security protocols, he smoothed ruffled feathers with genuine empathy while still maintaining our standards. One evening, about a month after he started, I found him alone in the break room, studying technical documentation with intense concentration. Light reading? I asked, pouring myself a cup of coffee. He looked up with a tired smile. Marcus suggested I learn the basics of API security before the Westridge meeting tomorrow. He rubbed his eyes. Some of it might as well be written in Martian, but I'm getting there. I sat across from him. How's it going overall? Honestly. Tyler considered the question carefully. Harder than anything I've ever done, he admitted, but also the most satisfying. He closed the manual. For the first time in my life, when something good happens, like when I helped land the Forrester account last week, I know it happened because of me, not because of my last name. That feeling never gets old, I assured him. Shannon's noticed. The difference too, he added. Say I come home exhausted but happier. How is she? Getting close now, right? His face lit up. 2 weeks to go, though the doctor says it could be any day. He pulled out his phone to show me a recent photo, Shannon looking radiant despite her obvious discomfort, their 3-year-old daughter Emma patting her mother's belly with solemn concentration. Beautiful family, I said sincerely. They're my reason for all this, he replied, gesturing to the technical manual. I want Emma and her sister to see that success comes from work and integrity, not entitlement. He hesitated. That's something? Your mom showed you that my dad never taught me. The observation caught me off guard. Mom never had it easy, I agreed. But she never complained either, just did what needed doing. She's amazing, Tyler said. Actually, that reminds me, we're having a small baby shower next weekend. Nothing fancy, just family. Shannon specifically asked if you could come. He looked slightly embarrassed. And, Melissa too, if she'd like. The invitation represented a significant shift in our family dynamic. We'll be there, I promised. The baby shower was held at Tyler and Shannon's new home, a modest colonial, in a good school district, purchased after they'd sold their luxury condo downtown. The change in lifestyle was immediately apparent. Gone were the designer furniture and expensive art pieces, replaced by comfortable, family-friendly furnishings. Shannon greeted me with genuine warmth, her hand resting on her enormous belly. "I'm so glad you could make it, Jason, and you must be Melissa." She welcomed my girlfriend with a hug. "I've heard so much about you." The gathering was intimate, just immediate family and a few close friends. To my surprise, Mom and Grandma Eleanor had been invited too. I found them in the kitchen with Shannon's mother, arranging food trays. "This is a first," Mom whispered, when I joined them. "Patricia said Robert refused to come, called it entertaining in a starter home." Grandma snorted. "His loss. This is a lovely home for a family." When gift opening time came, Shannon unwrapped practical items: baby clothes, diapers, books. Melissa and I had brought a handmade wooden rocking chair crafted by an artisan in northern Michigan. "It's beautiful," Shannon breathed, running her hand along the smooth wood. "My grandfather had one like it," I explained. "Some of my best memories are of him reading to me in his rocker." As the afternoon progressed, I noticed Tyler engaged in deep conversation with my mom in a quiet corner of the living room. Their discussion seemed intense but not tense. When they eventually rejoined the group, Mom's eyes were slightly red, and Tyler looked emotionally drained but somehow lighter. Later, as Melissa and I were preparing to leave, Tyler pulled me aside. "I need to thank you," he said quietly. "For the rocker? It was Melissa's idea, actually." "Not for that," he interrupted. "For everything else. The job, the chance to prove myself." He swallowed hard. "The opportunity to become someone I can actually be proud of." I wasn't sure how to respond to such raw honesty. "You're doing the work, Tyler. I just opened a door." "Sometimes that's all someone needs," he replied. "A door and the belief they might be capable of walking through it." 2 days later, at 3:17 a.m., my phone rang. It was Tyler, his voice breathless with excitement and fear. "Shannon's in labor. We're heading to the hospital now. Do you need anything?" I asked, instantly awake. "Someone to watch Emma?" "Already taken care of. Shannon's mom is with her." He paused. "I just wanted you to know." The simple fact that I was among his first calls in this moment moved me unexpectedly. "Keep me posted. I'll be thinking of you guys." 8 hours later, Tyler sent a photo to our family group chat. Shannon cradling a tiny bundle, looking exhausted but radiant. The caption read, "Introducing Ellie Grace Anderson, 7 new herbs 3 O's of pure perfection. Mom and baby are doing great." I smiled at the name. Ellie, short for Eleanor, a tribute to our grandmother. Later that evening, after finishing work, I drove to the hospital with a small gift. I found Tyler in the hallway outside Shannon's room, pacing with a coffee cup, looking simultaneously terrified and exhilarated, the universal expression of new parenthood. "Congratulations, Dad," I said, extending my hand. Instead of shaking, he pulled me into a bear hug. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." When he released me, I handed him the small package. "Something for Ellie." Inside was a silver baby bracelet, delicately engraved with the baby's name and birth date. "It's a family tradition," I explained. "Grandma got one for each of her grandchildren. I thought I'd continue it for the next generation." Tyler's eyes glistened. "Thank you. This means everything." As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From a childhood of strained family gatherings to this moment of genuine connection. The path had been anything but straight. It had taken my unexpected success, Tyler's humbling, and our shared family history to bridge the divide between us. Some people measure success in dollars or titles or possessions. Standing in that hospital hallway, I realized that true success might be something else entirely. The capacity to transform not just your own life, but to create ripples that change the lives around you. To break cycles of judgment and privilege and replace them with understanding and opportunity. The story that began at a family reunion with a careless comment about poor people outside had evolved into something neither of us could have predicted. And somewhere along the way, we'd both discovered that the most valuable keys we possess aren't the ones that start expensive cars, but the ones that unlock new versions of ourselves. 18 months after Ellie's birth, I stood on the observation deck of Detroit's Renaissance Center, watching snow fall gently over the city. The white flakes caught the glow of holiday lights, transforming the urban landscape into something almost magical. Behind me, the annual Resilient Shield holiday party was in full swing, music and laughter spilling from the rented event space. "There you are," Melissa said, joining me at the window. She handed me a glass of champagne. "Hiding from your own." "Party," I smiled, taking the glass. "Just taking a moment. It's been quite a year." That was an understatement. In the past 12 months, Resilient Shield had doubled its workforce, opened a second office in Austin, and been featured in Forbes as one of the top cybersecurity innovators in the country. Our valuation had crossed the billion-dollar mark, a milestone that still seemed surreal. "The team's wondering when you're giving your speech," Melissa said, slipping her arm through mine. "Marcus has already started the betting pool on whether—" "You'll cry this year," I laughed. "Tell him to put me down for dignified emotional moments rather than full waterworks." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "No promises. You got pretty choked up last year when you were talking about how proud your grandfather would have been." Before I could respond, the door to the observation deck opened again. Tyler stepped out, a glass of sparkling water in hand. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but the natives are getting restless. Vanessa sent me to find you both." Over the past year and a half, Tyler had grown into his role at Resilient Shield, eventually becoming one of our most valuable client liaisons. His natural charisma, now tempered with genuine humility, made him exceptional at building relationships with clients. 6 months ago, Marcus had promoted him to Senior Client Relations Manager, a position he'd earned entirely on merit. "How's Shannon?" Melissa asked as we made our way back to the party. "Exhausted but good," Tyler replied. "Ellie just figured out how to climb out of her crib, so sleep is a distant memory in our house." Despite his complaint, his face lit up as he mentioned his daughter. "She's got this new thing where she insists on reading bedtime stories to her stuffed animals. Complete gibberish, but with perfect inflection." "And Emma?" I asked about his older daughter. 5 going on 15, he said with a rueful smile. "Kindergarten's been an adjustment. She informed us last week that she wants to be a computer person, like Uncle Jason when she grows up." The casual way he referred to me as Emma's uncle warmed something in my chest. Over the months, our families had grown close. Sunday dinners, birthday celebrations, impromptu barbecues, the kind of easy, genuine connection I'd never expected to have with Tyler's branch of the family. As we re-entered the party space, I took a moment to observe the gathering. 200 employees and their guests filled the room, a stark contrast to our first holiday party 5 years ago, when we'd been a team of 12 celebrating in my apartment with pizza and beer. Vanessa intercepted us immediately. "There you are. We're ready for the year-end address whenever you are." I nodded, making my way to the small stage set up at one end of the room. The DJ lowered the music, and a hush gradually fell over the crowd. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. "They say a company is only as good as its people. If that's true, and I believe it is, then Resilient Shield isn't just good, it's extraordinary." I outlined the year's achievements, the new clients, the technological breakthroughs, the industry recognition. I acknowledged teams and individuals who had gone above and beyond. But success isn't just measured in contracts signed or revenue generated, I continued. It's measured in lives improved, including our own. My gaze found Tyler in the crowd, standing with his arm around one of the newer developers who'd joined us from a community coding program we'd established in partnership with Detroit Public Schools. This company was built on the belief that talent and determination can come from anywhere, that when given the right opportunity, people will surprise you with what they can achieve. I raised my glass. So here's to another year of surprises, another year of growth, not just as professionals but as people. Another year of proving that the most valuable assets in any organization aren't its patents or its profits, but its people. The crowd applauded, glasses raised in response. As promised, I managed to avoid full waterworks, though I caught Marcus exchanging money with Darren. Apparently, I'd been more composed than they'd wagered. As the music resumed and people returned to celebrating, I made my way through the crowd, stopping to chat with different team members. Near the dessert table, I found Mom deep in conversation with Jerry, who had become a fixture in her life over the past year. "Great speech, honey," Mom said, hugging me tightly. "Though you didn't mention that Resilient Shield was recently named one of the top 10 employers in the state. Mom's been showing that article to everyone at her book club," Jerry confided with an affectionate smile. "I think Mrs. Abernathy is ready to apply for a job in your mailroom just to stop hearing about it." Mom swatted his arm playfully. "A mother's allowed to be proud." As the evening progressed, I found myself increasingly reflective. Standing in a quiet corner with Melissa, I watched my employees, many now friends, celebrating another year of collective achievement. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Melissa asked, following my gaze. "Just thinking about how far we've come," I admitted. "Not just the company, but everything else." I nodded toward Tyler, who was now entertaining a group with what appeared to be an animated client anecdote. If someone had told me 2 years ago that Tyler would become one of my most trusted team members, I'd have thought they were delusional. Melissa smiled. "People can change when given the right motivation and opportunity." "Speaking of change," I said, suddenly nervous. "I've been thinking about making one more chance before the year ends." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind of change?" I took a deep breath, reaching into my pocket for the small velvet box I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Perhaps there was no perfect moment, just the right person. "The permanent kind," I said quietly, opening the box to reveal a vintage Art Deco engagement ring. "If you're interested." Melissa's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. For a terrifying moment, she was silent. Then she laughed, a joyful sound that set my heart racing. "Interested?" she repeated. "Jason Gibson, I've been waiting for you to ask that question since our second funding round." Relief and happiness flooded through me. "So, is that a yes?" In response, she threw her arms around my neck and kissed me thoroughly, drawing whoops and applause from nearby employees who suddenly became very interested in our corner of the room. "Definitely a yes," she whispered against my lips. By the time we broke apart, a small crowd had gathered around us, Tyler at the forefront with a knowing grin. "Finally," he exclaimed, clapping me on the shoulder. I was beginning to think I'd need to demonstrate how it's done. "You knew?" I asked, surprised. "He asked for my advice on the ring," Melissa explained, admiring the vintage piece now on her finger. "Apparently, I once mentioned loving Art Deco design. And he's been carrying it around for nearly a month," Tyler added, waiting for the right moment while we all watched him overthink it. As word of our engagement spread through the party, we were enveloped in a whirlwind of congratulations and well wishes. Mom cried happy tears, Jerry offered a toast, and Marcus started another betting pool, this time on potential wedding dates. Later that night, after the party wound down and we'd said goodbye to the last of our guests, Melissa and I stood alone. In the now quiet event space, staff were beginning the cleanup process, breaking down tables and gathering discarded glasses. "Some night," she said, leaning against me. "$1 billion company and a fiancé. Not bad for a kid from Riverside." I smiled, thinking of Grandpa's watch and his note about the true measure of success. Funny how things work out. The next morning, despite the late night, I woke early. Melissa was still asleep, the ring glinting on her finger in the soft morning. Light filtering through our bedroom blinds. I slipped out of bed quietly, made coffee, and settled in my home office to check emails. Among the usual weekend correspondence was a message from Uncle Robert, sent at 3 a.m. The subject line simply, curious, I opened it. "Jason, Patricia told me about your engagement. Congratulations. She also mentioned your company recently passed the $1 billion valuation mark. Another significant achievement." I find myself reflecting on our conversation at Eleanor's birthday celebration 2 years ago. You suggested that my low expectations might have been the best thing that happened to you, forcing you to prove yourself on merit alone. Perhaps you were right. Tyler has changed since joining your company, not just professionally, but personally. Shannon says he's present now in ways he never was before. More engaged with the girls, more grounded. It has made me reconsider certain assumptions I've held about success and how it's achieved. The Anderson Group is hosting its annual New Year's gathering at our lake house on the 30th. I know these events haven't always been comfortable for you, but I'd be grateful if you and your fiancé would attend. Your mother and Jerry are welcome as well, of course. There's something I'd like to discuss with you in person. Regards, Robert. The invitation surprised me. Uncle Robert's annual New Year's gathering was a notorious display of wealth and influence, a way for him to showcase the year's accomplishments to business associates and family alike. I'd attended exactly once as a teenager and had felt painfully out of place among the designer suits and discussions of yacht purchases. I was considering how to respond when my phone rang. It was Tyler. "Did you get Dad's email?" he asked without preamble. "Just reading it now," I confirmed. "Any idea what he wants to discuss?" Tyler was quiet for a moment. He's been talking about stepping back from the Anderson Group, looking at succession planning. This was unexpected. Uncle Robert had always seemed like someone who would work until his last breath, unwilling to cede control of the empire he'd built. "He's not sick, is he?" I asked, concerned. "No, nothing like that," Tyler assured me. I think seeing a different model of success has made him reflective. Shannon and I took the girls to visit last month, and he spent the whole weekend actually playing with them, not just talking about the trust funds he'd established. The image of my stern uncle on the floor playing with dolls was difficult to conjure. "So what does he want with me?" "I have a theory," Tyler said carefully. "But I'd rather let him explain. Will you come?" I thought about it. 2 years ago, I would have declined immediately, seeing no value in subjecting myself to an event designed to showcase status and wealth. But perhaps, like Tyler, Uncle Robert was capable of change. "I'll talk to Melissa," I promised. But tentatively, yes. The lake house was exactly as ostentatious as I remembered, a sprawling modernist structure of glass and cedar perched on the Michigan shoreline, with panoramic views of the water. As Melissa and I pulled up in my Tesla, the Honda, long since donated to a community college automotive program, I felt a familiar tension creep into my shoulders. "Breathe," Melissa reminded me, squeezing my hand. "It's just a house." A 14,000-square-foot house with an indoor pool and a wine cellar bigger than our first office, I muttered. "Still just a house," she insisted. "And we're just here for a few hours." Mom and Jerry pulled in behind us, having driven separately. Together, we approached the massive front entrance, where a valet waited to take our keys. Inside, the gathering was in full swing. About 60 people mingled in the great room, dressed in expensive casual wear that somehow still managed to look formal. I recognized some of Uncle Robert's business associates, various extended family members, and a few local celebrities who moved in the same circles. Aunt Patricia spotted us immediately, moving through the crowd with practiced grace. "Jason, Melissa, you made it." She enveloped me in a perfumed hug before turning to my mother. "Margaret, so good to see you. And this must be Jerry. Welcome, welcome." Her warmth seemed genuine, a contrast to the polite distance that had characterized our relationship for most of my life. "Robert is in his study," she informed me quietly. "He asked to see you when you arrived." Leaving Melissa with Mom and Jerry, I made my way through the house to the study, a book-lined room overlooking the lake. Uncle Robert stood at the window, watching ice skaters on the frozen shoreline below. "Jason," he acknowledged, turning. As I entered. "Thank you for coming." "Nice party," I said, for lack of a better opening. He smiled slightly. "Excessive, as always. Patricia enjoys the hosting." He gestured to a pair of leather armchairs. "Please, sit." As we settled across from each other, I noticed subtle changes in my uncle. His posture was less rigid, his expression less severe. At 65, he was still imposing, but something in his demeanor had softened around the edges. "I imagine Tyler mentioned I've been considering stepping back from daily operations at the Anderson Group," he began. I nodded. "He mentioned succession planning." "Indeed." Uncle Robert leaned back, studying me thoughtfully. "For years, I assumed Tyler would eventually take over. It was the plan since he was a boy. Why I pushed him so hard, insisted on the right schools, the right connections." I remained silent, uncertain where this was heading. But watching him these past 18 months, seeing how he's flourished at Resilient Shield, I've realized something important. He paused. "He's happier building something of his own than he would ever be inheriting what I built." The admission seemed to cost him something, an acknowledgement that the path he'd charted for his son had been more about his own legacy than Tyler's fulfillment. "He's good at what he does," I offered. "One of our strongest team members." Uncle Robert nodded. "He tells me you're expanding the client relations division, opening an office in Chicago. That's the plan for the coming year. He'd be an excellent choice to head that office," Uncle Robert suggested. "If you were considering candidates." I studied my uncle, trying to read his intent. "Tyler would need to apply for the position like anyone else. We don't do nepotism at Resilient Shield." To my surprise, he smiled. "I would expect nothing less." He reached for a folder on the side table. "Which brings me to what I wanted to discuss." He handed me the folder. Inside was a proposal, a potential partnership between Resilient Shield and the Anderson Group. Not an acquisition or investment, but a strategic alliance that would give us access to their client base across 5 industries where we were trying to expand. "We've been impressed with your security solutions," Uncle Robert explained. "Our clients in healthcare and finance have been asking for more robust cybersecurity integration. Rather than developing our own department, a partnership seemed more efficient." I reviewed the terms carefully. The proposal was fair, generous even. It would accelerate our growth in key sectors by at least 2 years. "This is unexpected," I admitted. "Consider it a belated recognition of your accomplishments," he said quietly. "And perhaps an attempt to bridge the gap I helped create in our family." The acknowledgement hung in the air between us, not quite an apology, but closer than I'd ever expected from Uncle Robert. "I'll need our legal team to review it," I said finally. "But conceptually, it makes sense for both organizations." He nodded, seeming satisfied. "Take your time. The offer doesn't expire." As we stood to rejoin the party, Uncle Robert hesitated. "One more thing." He reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a small package. an engagement gift for you and Melissa. I accepted it with surprise, unwrapping it to find a vintage compass in a hand-carved wooden case. The craftsmanship was exquisite, clearly an antique of significant value. It belonged to your great-grandfather, Uncle Robert explained. Before, the pocket watch. He used it when he first came to America, finding his way in a new country. He cleared his throat. It seemed fitting. You've always charted your own course. The unexpected sentimentality from my usually stoic uncle left me momentarily speechless. Thank you, I managed finally. This means a lot. He nodded once, his expression returning to its usual reserve, though something warmer remained in his eyes. We should rejoin the others before Patricia sends a search party. Back in the great room, I found Melissa deep in conversation with Shannon, while Mom and Jerry chatted with Grandma Eleanor, who had arrived during my absence. Tyler was entertaining Emma and Ellie, now an energetic toddler, by the massive stone fireplace. As I watched my family, all branches now intermingling without the old tensions, I was struck by how much had changed since that summer day, when Tyler had made his casual comment about poor people outside. The journey from that moment to this one hadn't been straightforward. It had taken confrontation, revelation, and ultimately, mutual respect to transform the dynamics that had separated us for so long. I joined Tyler by the fireplace, showing him the compass Uncle Robert had given me. Family heirloom? He asked, examining it carefully. Apparently, I confirmed. He also offered me a business partnership and suggested you should run our Chicago office. Tyler looked surprised, then thoughtful. Chicago, huh? Shannon's been saying she misses being closer to her parents. He watched his daughters playing nearby. What do you think? Would I be right for it? You'd need to apply like anyone else, I reminded him. But off the record, you'd be my first choice. His expression grew serious. 2 years ago, I would have expected the position handed to me because of who I was. Now I wouldn't want it unless I'd earned it, he smiled wryly. Funny how things change. Speaking of change, I said, your dad mentioned succession planning for the Anderson Group. If you're not taking over, who is? Tyler grinned. Allison. She's transitioning from pediatrics to healthcare administration. Turns out she has an incredible head for business. Dad finally recognized it after she overhauled the billing system at her hospital and saved them millions. The news delighted me. Allison had always been the most level-headed of the Anderson siblings. She'll be amazing. The Anderson Group's first female CEO, Tyler agreed proudly. Dad's already calling her the future of the company in board meetings. As midnight approached, the gathering moved to the lakeside terrace, where heaters had been set up to ward off the winter chill. Staff distributed champagne for the traditional New Year's toast. With Melissa at my side and our families around us, I watched the final moments of the year tick away. In the distance, the Detroit skyline glittered with promise. Uncle Robert stepped forward to make his annual address. Typically, these speeches focused on the Anderson Group's achievements and ambitious plans for the coming year. But tonight, he surprised everyone. As we prepare to welcome a new year, he began, I find myself reflecting not on balance sheets or acquisitions, but on the true measure of success. His gaze found mine across the terrace. Someone once told me that success isn't about what you accumulate, but about the obstacles you overcome and the lives you touch along the way. I recognized my grandfather's words from the note with the pocket watch, now apparently making their way into Uncle Robert's philosophy. Our family has been blessed with many forms of success, he continued. Some measured in traditional terms, others in ways that balance sheets can never capture. He raised his glass. To the year ahead, may it bring not just prosperity, but wisdom to recognize what truly matters. As glasses clinked and the new year arrived, I stood with my arm around Melissa, surrounded by family members who had once seemed impossibly distant, but now shared genuine bonds of understanding and respect. The journey that had begun with a careless comment and a set of car keys had transformed not just Tyler's perception of me, but my understanding of family and success. Sometimes the most valuable things we build aren't companies or fortunes, but bridges across the divides that separate us from each other. And sometimes, the greatest success isn't in proving others wrong about who you are, but in helping them become better versions of themselves in the process. 5 years passed with the swift certainty of pages turning in a well-loved book. Detroit's skyline evolved, with new buildings rising alongside restored historic structures, a visual testament to the city's renaissance. Resilient Shield had played its part in that transformation, now occupying 3 floors in one of downtown's premier office towers. Our Chicago branch, led by Tyler, who had indeed applied for and earned the position through a rigorous selection process, had grown to nearly 100 employees. The strategic partnership with the Anderson Group had exceeded all projections, opening doors that might have remained closed for years without that connection. On a crisp autumn Saturday, I stood in the sunlit garden of my grandmother's house, in Riverside, now beautifully renovated, but still recognizably the home where family gatherings had marked the seasons of our lives. Today's occasion was particularly special: Grandma Eleanor's 85th birthday. Uncle Jason. A blur of energy collided with my legs as Emma, now 10, wrapped her arms around my waist. Her younger sister Ellie, a spirited 7-year-old with her father's charisma and her mother's kindness, was close behind. "Did you bring Leo?" Emma asked eagerly, looking around for my son. "He's with Mom over by the food table," I replied, pointing to where Melissa was adjusting the sun hat on our 2-year-old's head. Leonard William Gibson, named for my grandfather and Melissa's father, was the center of our universe, a curious, determined toddler who had transformed our lives in ways I couldn't have imagined. "Can we show him the treehouse Uncle Jerry built?" Ellie asked, already bouncing with excitement. "After lunch," I promised, "and only if you're very careful with him on the ladder." They raced off to continue whatever elaborate game they'd been playing, their energy seemingly boundless. I made my way across the lawn, greeting family members as I went. The gathering was larger than I remembered from years past. Branches of the family that had once maintained polite distance now mingled comfortably. Mom and Jerry, married for 3 years now, were setting up a display of family photos spanning decades. Jerry had retired from teaching, but kept busy with community projects and, most recently, carpentry. Hence the elaborately crafted treehouse that had become the envy of every child in the neighborhood. "Need a hand?" I offered, joining them at the table. "We're almost finished," Mom said, adjusting a frame containing a 4-generation photo taken at Leo's christening. Grandma Eleanor, Mom, me, and Leo, connected by blood and something deeper than genetics could explain. I surveyed the collection of images: birthdays, graduations, weddings, births, the visual timeline of our family's journey. Among them was a candid shot from Melissa's and my wedding, capturing a moment I hadn't noticed at the time. Tyler and I in profile, heads bent in conversation, laughing about something now forgotten, the resemblance between us suddenly striking, despite our different paths. "Hard to believe how much has changed," Mom observed, following my gaze to the photo. "Some things haven't," I replied, squeezing her shoulder gently. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "The important things." Jerry glanced at his watch. "Almost time. I should check if Margaret needs help bringing out the cake." As he headed toward the house, Mom watched him with undisguised affection. "Best decision I ever made," she said softly. "Besides refusing your offer to buy me a sensible luxury condo." I laughed, remembering her stubborn insistence on staying in the modest house where I'd grown up, though she'd finally allowed me to help with much-needed renovations. "The house looks great with the new kitchen, though." "It does," she agreed. "But it's still home, not a showcase." The sound of a car pulling into the driveway drew our attention. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia had arrived, slightly late as usual. What was unusual was the vehicle. not the customary luxury sedan, but a practical mid-range SUV that could comfortably transport grandchildren and their assorted gear. Uncle Robert had gradually scaled back his involvement in the Anderson Group, though he still served as chairman emeritus. The past 5 years had softened him considerably, especially after his first health scare 3 years ago, a minor heart attack that had served as a profound wake-up call. "Sorry we're late," Aunt Patricia called as they approached, arms laden with gifts. Someone insisted on stopping to pick up extra ice cream. Uncle Robert looked only mildly chastened. "The children prefer the artisanal vanilla with the birthday cake. It's tradition." The fact that my once rigid uncle now concerned himself with children's ice cream preferences still occasionally caught me by surprise. He caught my eye and nodded in greeting, a gesture that carried more warmth than any effusive welcome could have. Allison arrived moments later with her husband Mark and their 1-year-old son James. As the newly appointed CEO of the Anderson Group, she balanced the demands of leadership with motherhood, a juggling act she managed with characteristic grace and determination. "The guest of honor is asking for everyone to gather," Allison announced after greeting the assembled family. "Apparently, she has an announcement to make." We converged on the backyard where Grandma Eleanor held court from her favorite chair, positioned in the shade of the maple tree that had stood sentinel over countless family gatherings. At 85, she remained sharp as ever, though her movements had slowed and she now relied on a cane for longer walks. "Took you all long enough," she commented dryly as we assembled around her. "I'm not getting any younger waiting." Laughter rippled through the group. Leo squirmed in Melissa's arms, reaching for me. I took him, settling him comfortably against my shoulder where he could observe the proceedings with curious eyes. "First," Grandma began, "thank you all for coming to celebrate with me. Looking around at your faces, all 5 generations of this family, is the greatest gift I could ask for." Her gaze traveled slowly around the circle, taking in each face with deliberate attention. Over the years, I've watched this family bend and almost break. I've seen divisions I thought might never heal. Her eyes found mine, then Tyler's. And I've seen those same divides bridged through courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to see beyond old assumptions. She gestured to the house behind her. "This place has been in our family for nearly 70 years. William and I raised our children here. Our grandchildren played in this yard. Now great-grandchildren and even great-great-grandchildren are creating their own memories here." A murmur of agreement passed through the gathering. Grandma waited for silence before continuing. "I've been thinking about legacy," she said thoughtfully. "Not just what we leave behind in terms of possessions, but the values and connections we nurture while we're here." She reached for a folder that Allison handed her. "I've decided to establish the Gibson-Anderson Family Foundation, using funds from the sale of some property William and I invested in decades ago, property that has appreciated quite nicely, I might add." This announcement caused a stir. It was the first any of us had heard about additional property holdings. "The foundation will focus on educational opportunities for young people in this community," Grandma continued. "Scholarships, apprenticeships, mentoring programs, helping talented kids who, like some in our own family, might otherwise be overlooked due to their zip code or family circumstances." Her eyes met mine again, and I felt a surge of emotion, recognizing that my own journey had helped inspire this legacy. "I've asked Jason and Allison to serve as the foundation's initial co-directors," she added, bringing together their complementary expertise in technology and business. Across the circle, Allison caught my eye, a smile of shared purpose passing between us. We'd grown closer over the years, discovering common ground despite our different backgrounds. "The details are all in here," Grandma said, patting the folder. "We can discuss them later. For now, I'm ready for cake." The announcement set the tone for the afternoon. As family members broke into smaller groups, conversations revolved around the foundation and its possibilities. Tyler joined Allison and me under the maple tree, Leo now happily toddling between us on unsteady legs. "Co-directors, huh?" Tyler grinned. Think you two can manage not to compete for once? Allison laughed. Says the man who turned our last family game night into a strategic warfare simulation. Monopoly is serious business, Tyler defended himself, though his smile betrayed him. The foundation is a brilliant idea, I said, returning to Grandma's announcement. Creating opportunities in this neighborhood could make a real difference. We could partner with your coding initiative, Allison suggested, referring to the program I'd established in Detroit public schools. Scale it to more districts. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. The Chicago branch has been working with a similar program. We could connect them, create a regional network. As we brainstormed, I was struck by how naturally the three of us had fallen into collaborative planning. The same energy and focus that had once been channeled into maintaining family divides was now directed toward building something meaningful together. Leo tugged at my pant leg, arms raised in the universal toddler. Signal for up. I lifted him, settling him on my shoulders where he could survey his domain with delighted giggles. Impressive treehouse, Tyler commented, gesturing to Jerry's creation. Emma's already asking if we can build one at home. Jerry would probably help, I offered. He's been looking for his next project since finishing Mom's kitchen renovation. I might take him up on that, Tyler said. Though I'd better consult with Shannon first. Last time I approved a backyard project without checking, I ended up sleeping on the couch for a week. Our conversation was interrupted by Shannon calling everyone for cake. Leo squirmed excitedly at the prospect of sugar, nearly toppling from his perch on my shoulders in his enthusiasm. As the afternoon progressed, I found myself drawn into a conversation with Uncle Robert, who had settled in a quiet corner of the yard, observing the festivities with contemplative eyes. Your grandmother never ceases to surprise me, he commented as I joined him. A foundation at 85. She's always taken the long view, I agreed, sitting beside him. He nodded, his gaze following Leo, who was now being entertained by Emma and Ellie. Something I've only learned to appreciate recently. He turned to me, his expression unusually open. The partnership between Resilient Shield and Anderson Group has exceeded expectations. It has, I acknowledged. The healthcare security protocol we developed with your team is being adopted industry-wide. Allison tells me you're considering expansion into international markets, he continued. Europe and Southeast Asia. I nodded, curious about his interest. We've been laying the groundwork for about a year, still navigating the regulatory complexities. Uncle Robert steepled his fingers thoughtfully. The Anderson Group has established relationships in both regions, particularly in Singapore and Geneva. He paused. Perhaps another collaborative opportunity. 5 years ago, I might have been wary of his suggestion, concerned about hidden agendas or attempts to exert control. Now I recognized it for what it was, a genuine offer to combine strengths for mutual benefit.
Siabi tinintinta tetinina sporita is sirindi. Eden motivate chupu. Conversation fit the milinated house. Fevlopen title sunnis emok Cody Kepeshiv Mendits.
Ellie's emerging talent for mathematics. The easy exchange would have been unimaginable in earlier years, when our interactions had been carefully choreographed exercises in polite distance. Later, as evening approached and the gathering began, to wind down, I found myself alone with Grandma Eleanor on the porch swing. The rhythmic creaking of the chains had a soothing quality, reminiscent of countless summer evenings from my childhood. So, she said after a comfortable silence, what do you think of my little surprise? The foundation is extraordinary, I replied honestly. Though I'm still processing being named co-director without warning, she chuckled. Would you have said no if I'd asked in advance? Of course not, I admitted. But advance notice might have been nice. At my age, I don't always have time for the niceties of consultation. she said with a dismissive wave. Besides, watching you and Allison try to hide your surprise was far more entertaining. I laughed, recognizing the gleam of mischief that age had never diminished. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? Since your reunion revelation? About Resilient Shield, she confirmed. That day showed me what was possible when talent is recognized and supported. She patted my hand. The foundation is just formalizing what you've already been doing, creating opportunities for young people to build something meaningful. The simple acknowledgement touched me deeply. Thank you for trusting us with this. Who is better? She asked simply. Then, glancing toward the yard where Leo was dozing in Melissa's arms, she added, though I expect the next generation will take it even further when their time comes. The mention of future generations reminded me of something I'd been meaning to share. I reached into my pocket, withdrawing a small silver key attached to a leather fob. Speaking of legacies, I said, placing it in her palm. Melissa and I closed on Grandpa's old machine shop last week. Grandma's eyes widened in surprise. The building on Elmwood? It's been vacant for years. Not anymore, I said. We're converting it into Resilient Shield's Innovation Lab, a space for our developers to experiment with next-generation security solutions. I paused, watching her expression. We're calling it Gibson Workshop in Grandpa's honor. Tears gathered in her eyes as her fingers closed around the key. William would have loved that. There's more, I continued. The second floor will house our community coding program, free classes for local students interested in technology careers. I smiled, remembering my own early fascination with computers. The kind of opportunity I would have given anything for at that age. Grandma nodded, understanding the full circle this represented. From making machine parts to building digital safeguards, different tools, same spirit. As twilight deepened into evening, family members began their departures, hugs, promises to call, plans for upcoming gatherings. Tyler's family was staying, overnight in their old rooms, a tradition they'd maintained despite having their own home nearby. Allison and her husband were taking Grandma home with them for the weekend, giving Mom and Jerry some quiet time after hosting. Melissa approached, with a sleeping Leo draped against her shoulder. We should probably get this little man home to his own bed, she whispered. I nodded, rising carefully to avoid disturbing the porch swing's gentle rhythm. Grandma Eleanor reached for my hand as I prepared to leave. Jason, she said softly, do you remember what you told me on my 80th birthday? About success? I thought back to our conversation in Grandpa's study 5 years earlier. That it isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by the obstacles you overcome and the lives you touch. She nodded, satisfaction in her eyes. Look around, you. At this family that once seemed broken beyond repair, at the bridges you helped build through simple integrity and forgiveness. Her hand tightened on mine. By any measure, that's success worth celebrating. As we drove home through the familiar streets of Detroit, Leo sleeping peacefully in his car seat, Melissa reached across the console to take my hand. Happy? She asked simply. I considered the question, thinking of the day's events. The foundation announcement, Uncle Robert's international collaboration proposal, the Gibson workshop taking shape in Grandpa's old building, the sight of Emma patiently showing Leo how to build a tower with blocks, their heads bent together, in shared concentration. Completely, I replied. The journey that had begun with a careless comment about poor people outside had transformed into something neither Tyler nor I could have imagined that summer day. The keys in my pocket that had once seemed like a potential weapon, a way to prove my worth through material success, had instead unlocked something far more valuable. The truth that family connections, when built on genuine understanding and respect, were the most precious currency of all. As Detroit's skyline came into view, illuminated against the night sky, I thought about the intertwined legacies we were creating. Not just in business achievements or foundation initiatives, but in the values we were passing to the next generation, teaching them that true wealth isn't measured by what you possess, but by what you build together, that success worth having is success worth sharing. And perhaps most importantly, sometimes the most valuable key isn't the one that starts an expensive car, but the one that opens doors for others to walk through, doors that might otherwise remain closed. In the quiet of our home later that night, after settling Leo in his crib, I found myself drawn to the small wooden box that still held Grandpa's pocket watch. Beside it now sat great-grandfather's compass, and, most recently, the silver key to the Gibson workshop. 3 generations of Gibson men, each finding their own path, each leaving something meaningful for those who followed. As I closed the box, carefully, I wondered what legacy Leo would one day add to this collection, what doors he would unlock, what bridges he would build. Whatever shape his journey took, I was certain of one thing. He would never measure his worth by zip codes or bank accounts, but by the integrity of his actions and the lives he touched along the way. And in a world that often confuses price with value, that might be the most important inheritance of all. 10 years after that fateful family reunion, I stood at the podium in the newly completed Gibson Anderson Community Center in downtown Riverside. The modern glass and brick building stood on land that had once housed abandoned warehouses, a symbol of both urban renewal and our family's evolution. Today marks not just the opening of a building, I began, looking out at the assembled crowd of family members, community leaders, and the first cohort of scholarship recipients, but the continuation of a journey that began generations ago. In the front row, Grandma Eleanor sat in her wheelchair, now 90 years old but still sharp as ever, her eyes bright with pride. Beside her, Leo, now 7 and looking so much like my grandfather that it sometimes startled me, fidgeted slightly, in his dress clothes, but maintained the solemn expression he'd practiced for this important occasion. A decade ago, this community was where some saw only limitations, where success was measured by how quickly you could leave, not by what you could build here. My gaze found Tyler, sitting with Shannon and their daughters, Emma, now 15, and considering computer science programs for college, Ellie 12 and already showing signs of her father's business acumen and her mother's compassion. Beside them sat their youngest, 6-year-old William, named for our grandfather. The Gibson Anderson Foundation began with a simple premise. Talent exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. Our mission was to change that equation, to invest in the potential of young people who might otherwise be overlooked. In the 5 years since its inception, the foundation had awarded over 200 scholarships, established mentoring programs in 12 schools, and created a technology incubator that had already launched 6 successful startups founded by Riverside natives. This community center represents the next phase of that commitment, a place where education, innovation, and community converge. Where coding classes and business development workshops happen alongside senior citizen programs and family support services. The project had been a true family collaboration. Allison had structured the financing through an innovative public-private partnership. Tyler's client relations expertise had secured corporate sponsorships. Uncle Robert, now retired, but still sharp at 75, had leveraged his connections to navigate zoning challenges. Mom and Jerry had organized the community outreach, ensuring the center's programs reflected actual neighborhood needs rather than outsider assumptions. None of this would have been possible without countless hands working together. Family members, who once stood divided but found common purpose, and community members who never stopped believing in what this neighborhood could become. As I spoke, I couldn't help reflecting on the journey that had brought us here, how a moment of casual cruelty had ultimately sparked a transformation none of us could have predicted, how success, when redirected toward creating opportunity for others, became something more meaningful than any individual achievement. After the ceremony, as attendees toured the facility and enjoyed refreshments in the community garden that occupied the center's rooftop, I found myself alone with Tyler on the observation deck overlooking the neighborhood where we'd both grown up, though with vastly different perspectives. "Remember when I made that stupid comment about poor people outside?" he asked quietly, gazing at the renovated storefronts and restored homes that had replaced abandoned buildings and empty lots. "Hard to forget," I admitted, "though sometimes I think about sending you a thank you note for it." He looked surprised. "Why would you thank me for being an entitled jerk?" "Because that moment forced both of us to confront realities we'd been avoiding," I explained. "Me about my success, you about your prejudices. Without that catalyst, who knows if we'd be standing here today?" Tyler considered this, nodding slowly. "Sometimes the worst parts of ourselves create the opportunity to find the best parts." He gestured toward the community space below, where Emma was showing a group of younger kids how the center's 3D printing lab worked. "I just hope our children start from a better place than we did." "They already have," I assured him. "They're growing up seeing what's possible when family divisions heal and privilege becomes purpose." Inside, the celebration continued. Melissa was deep in conversation with Shannon about expanding the coding program to include more girls and non-binary youth. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia were being given a tour of the Senior Wellness Center by Grandma Eleanor, who insisted on showing off the technology-forward exercise equipment she'd personally selected. Mom and Jerry, now in their 70s but still energetic, were organizing a group of volunteers for the center's opening week activities. Allison was introducing her teenage son James to several Foundation Scholarship recipients who were now studying engineering, the field he hoped to pursue. Leo tugged at my sleeve, his face serious. "Dad, can I show Grandma my project now?" "Of course," I replied. "Let's find her." We located Grandma Eleanor in the center's history room, where photographs and artifacts chronicling the neighborhood's evolution were displayed. The centerpiece was a glass case containing items of particular significance to the Gibson-Anderson legacy: Grandpa's tools from the machine shop, photos of the original family homes, news clippings about business milestones. "Grandma," Leo said. With the careful formality of a child on an important mission, I made something for the history display. From his pocket, he withdrew a small carved wooden box, similar to the one that had held Grandpa's pocket watch, but sized for smaller hands. With a solemn ceremony, he opened it to reveal a small silver key. "It's for my treehouse," he explained. "The one Uncle Jerry helped me build. I want to put it in the display because—" He glanced at me for reassurance, and I nodded encouragingly. "Because Dad says every generation adds something to our family story, and I think my treehouse is important because it's where I do my thinking and inventing." Grandma Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the box. "It's perfect, Leo, and exactly right for our display." She leaned forward in her wheelchair to meet his eyes directly. "Do you know why keys are so special in our family?" He nodded seriously. "Because they don't just open doors, they open possibilities." "That's right," she confirmed, her weathered hand covering his small one. "And sometimes the most important doors we open are the ones that let other people through." As Leo carefully placed his contribution in the display case, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Uncle Robert had joined us, his expression contemplative as he watched the interaction between my son and his mother. "You know," he said quietly, "I spent decades measuring success by what I could acquire. It took watching you and Tyler forge a different path to realize what I'd been missing." I followed his gaze to where our extended family had gathered. 4 generations now, connected not just by blood, but by shared purpose. "We all found our way eventually." "Some faster than others," he acknowledged with a rueful smile. The center's director approached, reminding us that the community open house would begin in 30 minutes. As family members helped with final preparations, I took a moment alone in the history room, studying the photographs that documented our journey. There was one from Grandma's 80th birthday, capturing the moment when divisions had begun to heal. Another from the Gibson workshop opening, showing local students receiving their first coding credentials. A recent one from the Foundation's scholarship ceremony, with Allison and me flanking a group of beaming recipients. And at the end, a space, left deliberately empty, awaiting future chapters yet to be written by generations to come. As I turned to join the others, my hand instinctively touched the Tesla key in my pocket, the same one that had revealed my success to Tyler all those years ago. I hadn't driven that particular car in years, having switched to electric models better suited to family life, but I kept the key as a reminder, not of the material success it had represented, but of the moment when showing my truth had created space for others to discover theirs. When keys became symbols not of what we possessed, but of the doors we could open for each other. Outside, the community was gathering, families arriving for the open house, children racing toward the playground. Equipment, seniors settling on benches in the garden area. This neighborhood, once defined by what it lacked, was redefining itself through connection and opportunity. As I rejoined my family, the one I was born into, and the one we had built together, I realized that the greatest success isn't measured in dollars or titles or possessions. It's measured in the bridges we build across divides that once seemed impassable, in the opportunities we create for others to discover their potential, in the legacy of possibility we leave for those who come after us. And sometimes that journey begins with a single moment of truth, when someone sees beyond appearances to the person you've become, and the keys in your pocket reveal not just what you've achieved, but who you truly are. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.